You know, in the world of politics, there are a couple of jobs that really stand out: President of the United States and Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. But have you ever stopped to think about how they actually get there? Because the paths to power are, well, they're wildly different. So today, we're going to break it all down.
So, how do you actually win one of these jobs? I mean, they're both leaders of huge democracies, right? But the way they get to the top couldn't be more different. One is this massive, personal, nationwide race. The other? It's all about controlling the legislature.
Yeah, think of it like this: a long, grueling marathon versus a fast-paced parliamentary sprint. It's a great way to frame it. So let's dive into the marathon first, the American system.
And trust me, calling it a marathon is no exaggeration. The road to the White House is this super long, incredibly structured journey. It's got all these specific checkpoints along the way, and it's really designed to test candidates over many, many months.
Okay, so this whole thing plays out over like the better part of a year. It kicks off with these internal party battles, right? The primaries and caucuses. Then you've got the big flashy national conventions, and after all that, you finally get to the general election. But, and this is a huge but, it doesn't just end with whoever gets the most votes from the people. The final decision actually goes to this thing called the Electoral College.
And this really gets to the heart of the U.S. system. It's what we call an indirect election. So, get this. When Americans go to the polls, they're not technically voting directly for a president. Nope. They're actually voting for a group of people called electors in their state. And it's these 538 electors from all the states combined who cast the final decisive votes. Kind of wild, right?
So what's the goal? It all comes down to one magic number: 270. Out of those 538 electoral votes up for grabs, a candidate has to win at least 270 to take the presidency. That's it. It's the whole ball game, the race to 270.
All right, now let's hop across the pond to the UK. The path to number 10 Downing Street is, well, a completely different beast. Here the race isn't about winning individual states. It's all about one thing: commanding a majority in the legislature.
And this is probably the biggest difference of all. The head of government, the prime minister, isn't chosen in a separate presidential-style election. They have to be a member of parliament first. The executive branch and the legislative branch are totally intertwined. If you want to run the country, you first have to be able to run the House of Commons.
So how does it work? Well, it's actually pretty straightforward. Step 1, you have to become the leader of your political party. Step 2, you lead that party into a general election, and your goal is to win the most seats out of the 650 in the House of Commons. If your party wins a majority, then, and only then, does the monarch formally invite you to become prime minister and form a government. It's a really clear, direct link between legislative power and executive power.
Now, I know when you hear the word monarch, you might think, wait, so the king or queen gets to pick? But no, not at all. It's not a personal choice. The role is almost entirely ceremonial. It's all dictated by this long-standing rule, or convention, that they have to appoint the person who can command the support of the majority in parliament. It's all about the election results, period.
Okay, so we've seen both paths. Now let's put them side by side and really dig into the core differences, what it means for the voter, for the system, and for the final outcome.
And if you're a voter, this is probably the biggest difference you'd notice. In the US, your ballot has the names of the presidential candidates right there. You vote for your national leader. But in the UK, you're voting for your local representative, your member of parliament. The name of the person who might become prime minister isn't even on the ballot. The PM is just a consequence of all those local results added up.
So let's just recap with this table. On one side, you've got the US, a constitutional, indirect election that happens like clockwork every 4 years. The final decider, that Electoral College. On the other side, the UK, a parliamentary, party-based system where an election can happen anytime within 5 years. The final decider, who controls parliament. I mean, there's just two fundamentally different blueprints for choosing a leader.
Okay, this is all interesting. But so what? Why does any of this actually matter? How did these different rulebooks change the game when it comes to real-world politics and power?
Well, the implications are actually huge. For starters, think about campaigning. In the US, it all boils down to a laser focus on a handful of swing states that could tip the Electoral College. In the UK, it's a ground war fought in hundreds of individual constituencies. Then there's accountability. A US president is really only accountable to the whole nation every 4 years. A British prime minister, they have to stand up in parliament every single week and get grilled by the opposition. It's this intense, direct scrutiny. And finally, the outcome.
The U.S. system has this weird quirk where a president can win the election without winning the most individual votes nationwide. That's a scenario that's just not possible in the UK system.
And all of this really leads us to the big question, doesn't it? Which system actually does a better job of reflecting the will of the people? And honestly, there's no simple answer. The American system, at its core, values building a broad coalition across geographically diverse states. The British system, on the other hand, values a clear, direct link between the legislature and the person in charge. Each one has its own logic, its own set of pros and cons. And understanding that fundamental difference is really the key to understanding two very different but equally powerful models of modern democracy.